Ah, yes, the Big Apple. Or as I like to call it, home sweet home. Sure, it isn't always a bowl of cherries, but it truly is the center of the universe. Or at least my universe. Oh, you think I'm being an East Coast elitist? Well, first of all, okay, you're right. But B, I'm also actually right, because banking, commerce, sports, fashion, media, the United Nations, all right here in the Big Apple. Just look at our glorious skyline. Oh yeah, it really is a breath of fresh air. Well, visually at least. Turns out that skyscrapers like these are kind of choking us. Skyscrapers account for 70% of all New York City's greenhouse gas emissions. But change is afoot. In 2019, Local Law 97 was passed. The progressive legislation takes direct aim at the greenhouse emissions of these large buildings and requires them to update everything from outdated heating systems to leaky windows and to more efficient lighting systems. And if you don't comply, prepare to be fined and catch some serious flack from this guy. Peter Sikora is a climate activist and Local Law 97 advocate, and he has no qualms with being a thorn in the side of high-polluting landlords.
The administration should make clear that this law is to be followed, full stop. The outlier buildings that may or may not be able to comply are just outliers. That shouldn't be something that's stressed all the time. Instead, the administration should be making clear that the law must be obeyed.
He thought it'd be a good idea to take me on a little trash-talking walking tour of some of the more polluting skyscrapers in the city.
So what is the deal with this new building?
It is a super tall luxury building, and they just built it, but it turns out it's a bit of a lemon. So this bad boy here is about 5,000 tons of CO2 equivalent over its pollution limit already, and it's a new building for 2030.
So that was a choice, or was that just the law changed before?
432 Park exemplifies extreme wealth, building extremely wasteful properties and living an extravagant lifestyle. So this building really exemplifies the kind of building that needs to overhaul and cut its pollution. Yeah, I'd say shame, shame, shame on these guys.
So we are obviously standing in front of Trump Tower. You mean to tell me that the guy who pulled us out of the Paris Agreement, his namesake building, is not environmentally friendly?
This is a big shock to everyone.
Very big shock.
That Trump Tower is wasteful and a big source of hot air. This building produces about 5,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent per year. That sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. It's a large building, so inherently it's going to have a larger pollution footprint, but it's also energy inefficient. So this building right here is going to pay about $1 million a year in penalties. And we know former President Trump, he's not free with his money, so hopefully the $1 million penalty will compel them to actually cut their pollution.
What is Local Law 97?
It's the law that sets requirements for large buildings in New York City, which are the top source of the city's climate heating pollution. It requires those buildings to clean up.
Are there other cities that are doing similar things?
There are. After this law passed, Washington, D.C. passed a similar law. St. Louis has passed a law like this, in Boston. And we're hoping that it spreads across the country.
What are some of the challenges moving forward? Who's done things the right way so far?
This is the thing. The law covers about 50,000 buildings, the tallest buildings in New York City. There's 1 million buildings, but 5% of them, the tallest ones, are producing over half of the pollution. So,
wow.
Yeah, you look at this, and in aggregate, these buildings are about 1/3 of New York City's pollution profile. And that needs to come down by about 40% by 2030 under this law, and then 80% by 2050. This is millions of metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent each year reduced. So these buildings all need to overhaul over time. So it's just an enormous job. But there's a big threat here looming to this law, and that is that the real estate lobby wants to gut it. They are really mad that the city passed this law, that we successfully got it through. And so what they want to do is weaken the law's requirements in the regulatory process.
And what better way to weaken a law than to overturn it? A group of big building landlords have filed a lawsuit with the New York Supreme Court to do just that. So what happens if the grumbly landlords win? Is New York City, and hence the world, doomed to drown in a deluge of climate change-driven seawater? Well, not necessarily. Responsible private sector action is always an option, and some buildings have actually led by example. Case in point, New York City's crown jewel, the Empire State Building, which completed a $300 million plus retrofit before Local Law 97 even existed. Not only that, but owner and operator of the ESB, Tony Malkin, claims they've already made their money back in energy savings. So, in keeping with being a tourist in my own backyard, why not get a free tour of America's ultimate landmark with good old Tony Malkin?
This is the museum,
Okay.
right?
Oh, so cool.
Now watch the cat.
No way.
No, way.
This is cool as
It is pretty cool.
Wow.
So here we are at the top. We rode up on elevators that are the latest technology. So instead of friction brakes that produce heat when the elevators go down, they have a digital energy generation set attached.
Okay.
And that creates electricity, and that powers the elevators that go up in the building. And the regeneration consumes about 50% as much as a typical elevator
Wow.
in the way of electricity.
Tony is very proud of the work that he and his team did to make the #1 attraction in the city energy efficient. So much so that he and his colleagues published their own guidebook on the topic to help other skyscraper landlords go green.
We wanted to differentiate the Empire State Building.
Okay.
I later realized greening is largely greenwashing. Bike racks, plant walls, water features, that will not change the world.
Correct, yeah.
If you really want to change the world, you've got to do the deep work.
But as the only commercial landlord on the advisory board to implement Local Law 97, he has been a vocal critic of the legislation and has sympathy for the plaintiffs in the lawsuit.
Anybody who thinks Local Law 97 is a silver bullet is wrong. There are lots of carve-outs. New York City Housing Authority is carved out. They have a different
So they don't have to
standard.
comply? Aren't they some of the most polluting buildings in the city?
Yes, so it's leave the affordable housing and the NYCHA housing out
Okay.
and apply a different standard to them,
What's that standard?
less rigorous. Because the people who wrote the bill, they viewed it as class warfare. Soak the rich.
I mean, I kind of understand this, so I haven't had the best experience with landlords, so I sort of understand the complexity, I think, of what people might be feeling from their personal experience.
The reality is, if you make this an us versus them thing,
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
No,
You've got
for
to
sure.
partner together.
Yeah.
And to me, good policy is informed by good practice. And so the us versus them thing has got to get nuked.
Class warfare or not, the main reason why NYCHA and other low-income housing is carved out of Local Law 97 is quite simple. They can't afford the upgrades.
Lower ceilings than you might normally see.
Donnell Baird and his company Block Power aims at retrofitting the types of buildings that are exempt from Local Law 97. And while he agrees with Tony that carving out low-income housing and the like was a huge mistake, he believes he may have the solution.
I think that all the buildings should have to comply, and the city and the state should continue to lead the way in demonstrating if we can green low-income buildings, you guys can certainly green your more affluent buildings.
And so who pays for it? How do the economics work?
It's going to cost like $4 or $5 trillion to green all of the buildings in America, and there's just not enough government money to do that. It's like much bigger than the federal budget. So what we do is we mix a little bit of government subsidy and money with low interest loans from Goldman Sachs and Microsoft, and like lower the interest rate. And then we use that pool of capital to purchase the equipment and lease it or loan it to building owners in a way that's affordable. And we stretch out their repayment over 15 years. It's kind of like getting a mortgage.
Okay.
So there's like 250,000 skyscrapers, like giant tall buildings in America. And there's like 125 million other kinds of buildings, 5 million of which are medium-sized buildings, like a church or a synagogue or a mosque or a school. So 5 million buildings across America are this kind of medium-sized building. We're at St. Margaret Mary in the Bronx, which is a thriving congregation, filled with immigrant families. And as we like to say, we have turned this building into a Tesla. We've upgraded the energy system of this building to reduce greenhouse gas and save money, and that's why we're here.
Okay, this looks old.
Super old. This is the oil burner. This burns oil that comes in through these pipes, and there's a flame, and it like literally burns the oil and produces a bunch of pollution. This is what we want to get rid of. This is what's causing 70% of fossil fuel emissions in New York City.
Oh, wow, all right.
We got to move away from that. 20 years from now, when we look back on it, burning oil or burning gas to cook and heat our homes with is going to be like lead paint. This is better, right? This is modern, all-electric heat pump compressor unit. It's kind of like an air conditioner that can go forwards or backwards. So these systems, 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and a 23% reduction in energy costs. So now we got to do it for all the other buildings in the neighborhood. And so you got this law, you got this hardware breakthrough, we have the financing that's going to be available. I think we're going to come together as New Yorkers and make it work and like show the world that, we're the greatest city in the world and we can lead on climate.
That's right, we are the greatest city in the world. Thanks for reminding me, Donnell. That old saying comes to mind, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So let's change it up to something like, if we can decarbonize, so can you? So let's get to work. So the next time you visit the greatest city in the world, or any city for that matter, it won't be underwater.